Test. There's an audio check for the bridge. Angela, could you please confirm that you can hear us on the audio conference bridge? She can't hear me. Can you hear me at all, Angela, if I'm talking like this? Nothing. Yep. This is for you, right? So keep 3 clear because we're messing around with 3.
What's this one? Is that? Okay.
This is that.
This one?
This is the wrong side.
No, that's not us.
Okay. Where are we going? This one?
No, no, no.
No? Yeah. No?
We didn't use that.
Where are we?
How much time do you still need?
Yeah.
To slow down?
Few more minutes.
5?
That was magic. Yeah. So this is our skew, right? Okay, Angela, now we're testing yet again the audio for the bridge for the virtual press conference of WHO. Please confirm if you can hear me.
I can hear you now, yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, I think we're going to need it. Wow, that's a good.
So, look, we go again.
The bridge is kind of apologizing. We're having some issues. Please talk clearly.
Yeah,
And
okay.
if they can hear you, would have to repeat it.
Okay.
That's not take too long.
Okay. And you will, again, give me some that we haven't seen before.
Sorry, XD means the executive director.
Yes. All good? Hey? So, look, I have their plates. I'll just keep them with me. And if they get cold, I'll just... And they can sit here. Yeah, so I'll just... Yeah.
Right.
I'll just... So I'll give a floor to DG, and then to Sylvie, and then we can... Is that correct?
I know everyone do DG. This is what Gabby said earlier with DG to Mike and Mike to Scott.
Ah, okay. Just call it quickly. Hey, Gabby, just to be clear, so DG starts giving floor to Mike, giving floor to Scott, and then giving floor to Sylvie. Is that correct? No. Yeah. And then we go to Sylvie. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Okay. If he does so, it's fine. So Mike, and then if DG asks Scott to speak, we let Scott speak.
So Scott should stay.
Yeah.
And Sylvia will.
And then we go to
meeting.
Yeah.
That's all she really has.
Yeah.
WHO Taiwan retweeted me.
Huh?
I hope it's right. You said you were going to create a crisis management cell at the UN level, but I wasn't quite clear. So you guys know more on that. That's what he said last night.
Really? I didn't listen. So I don't have it down, please.
Hi, it's John. Who's the producer? I think it is. Who's it? Sarah. I'm sorry? Who's on now? Okay. No, Chris
Well, this one we don't well.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for coming to the World Health Organization headquarters here in Geneva for the update on the situation regarding novel coronavirus. Also, big welcome to all journalists who are dialing in, and hope we will not have technical issues. I understand we had some, so hopefully everything will work fine. Also, this is being broadcast on WHO Twitter and Facebook account. As always, we will have a transcript later in the evening from this briefing, and audio file immediately. For journalists listening to us online, please dial 01 on your keypad to be put in a queue to ask questions. Today we have with us Dr. Tedros, WHO Director General, Dr. Mike Ryan, Executive Director for WHO Health Emergencies Program, and Dr. Sylvie Briand, who is the Director for Global Infectious Hazard Preparedness. We also have Dr. Maria Van Kerkhove, who you already know, as well as we have our Director for Strategic Planning and Partnerships, Scott Pendergast. Two of them may be answering some questions. So I'll give the floor immediately to Dr. Tedros for his opening remarks. Dr. Tedros.
Thank you. So today's press conference is as what we have already announced, that we will have a daily press conference starting from today. So this will be the first one. And we will continue to have a daily briefing unless you're tired of us. So I'd like to start by saying good afternoon and welcome to all media. It's a record, actually, more than 100, including those online. And thank you so much for your interest on this very, very important issue during these very difficult times. And let me begin with the latest numbers. As of 6 a.m. Geneva time this morning, there are 24,363 confirmed cases in China and 490 deaths. In the last 24 hours, we had the most cases in a single day since the outbreak started. Outside China, there are 191 cases in 24 countries and 1 death in the Philippines. Of those, 31 cases are in people with no travel history to China, but all are close to contacts of a confirmed case or of someone from Wuhan. So far, 99% of the cases are in China, and 80% of cases in China are from Hubei province. Last night, I said that some high-income countries are well behind in sharing vital case data with WHO. I'm pleased to report that since then, many countries are already reporting, and this is welcome news. As I said last night, the relatively small number of cases outside China gives us a window of opportunity to prevent this outbreak from becoming a broader global crisis. Our greatest concern is about the potential for spread in countries with weaker health systems and who lack the capacity to detect or diagnose the virus. We're only as strong as the weakest link. Those of you listening to the technical briefing yesterday heard the plea from some developing countries for funding. And there are many countries in the same position. What is WHO doing to support those countries could be the question. We continue to support the Chinese government's efforts to address the outbreak at the epicenter, at the source in Wuhan. We must not forget how difficult this is for the people of Wuhan. But doing our best at the epicenter slows the spread of the virus, and that's what we're seeing. We're also continuing to provide scientific leadership. Today, the Strategic and Technical Advisory Group, chaired by Dr. David Heyman, has met and given us advice, especially on areas that we don't know. Separately, WHO has released a total of $9 million from our own contingency fund for emergencies. WHO is sending 500,000 masks, more than 350,000 pairs of gloves, 40,000 respirators, and almost 18,000 isolation gowns from our warehouses in Dubai and Accra to 24 countries. And we will add more countries. We're sending 250,000 tests to more than 70 reference laboratories globally to facilitate faster testing. But we need to do more. This is not enough. That's why today we're launching a strategic preparedness and response plan to support countries to prevent, detect, and diagnose onward transmission. We're requesting $675 million to fund the plan for the next 3 months. 60 million of that is to fund WHO's operations. The rest is for the countries that are especially at risk and who need our support. Our message to the international community is invest today or pay more later. Invest today or pay more later. $675 million is a lot of money, but it's much less than the bill we will face if we do not invest in preparedness now during the window of opportunity that we have. Once again, we cannot defeat this outbreak without solidarity, political solidarity, technical solidarity, and financial solidarity. I would like to thank the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for quickly stepping up to offer $100 million in support for accelerating response efforts, strengthening preparedness systems in the most vulnerable countries, and to support diagnostics, vaccine and treatment research and development. As you know, we're working very aggressively on developing therapeutics and vaccines, and this pledge from the foundation will help us in speeding up the research on therapeutics and vaccines. Finally, we understand that people are worried and concerned, and rightly so. But this is not a time for fear. This is not a time for panic. It's a time for rational, evidence-based action and investment, while we still have a window of opportunity to bring this outbreak under control. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tedros. So now I'll give a floor to Dr. Ryan. Nope. So then we will go to Dr. Brian, who maybe can tell us a few words about a meeting she announced yesterday at a press conference at the UN regarding talks with the travel industry. Dr. Brian, please.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So indeed, today we had a second teleconference with travel and tourism industry. The aim of those teleconferences is really to foster the dialogue between WHO and those companies. Most of them are, our interlocutors are umbrella companies, such as the UN, World Tourism Organization, or IATA or ICAO, and so and also some individual airlines that are attending those calls. So, as I said, the aim is to really have a good dialogue with them. Firstly, on the situation. Secondly, on the risk, how they perceive the risk, but also we can then comment on what is the risk and the evidence we have on the risk and the disease. And we discuss also the measures that are put in place, whether these measures are for their customers or the measure for their own employees. So today, the discussion was really to understand what challenges they are facing currently after the announcement of the public health emergency of international concerns, and how we can help them to face this new situation. So what they express as a concern is the fact that the situation in the world is diverse, and of course the epicenter remain in China, but some countries have imported cases, and therefore they have observed a diversity in the implementation of the IHR recommendations. And so we have discussed these different modalities they have been facing, and we are continuing the dialogue to see how we can reduce the inconsistencies that are currently seen. And very concretely, it means, for instance, that certain companies, they have to make different announcements
to their passengers on board, depending on where the flight is going. And so for them, it's complicated to have different messages depending on the destination. So we are working with them to see how we can reduce those inconsistencies, but also help them to be aware of the evolving situation so that we can have a better collaborative action in the coming days. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Briand. Just before we go to questions, I hear from some journalists online that the sound may not be the best, so I apologize for that. You may wish also to follow us on Twitter and WHO account where we have a live stream. For journalists online, please type 01 on your keypad and you will be put in a queue for questions. So now we will start here in a room, and I see Jamie, John, and then we have a lady there with the 3 questions from the room. Please, Jamie.
Is there a microphone?
Yes.
Should I just yell it? Hello, Dr. Tedros. Thank you for meeting with us again. I have 2 questions. The United Kingdom and some other countries, about a half dozen, have recommended that all its nationals leave China. This directly contradicts the WHO's current recommendations. Is that kind of a response from the UK and other countries proportionate and could actually make things worse? And then my second question just has to do with comments by John McKenzie, a member of your EC today in the FT, who said that China's response to the outbreak in its early stages was, quote, reprehensible, and that they were hiding cases while there were political meetings in Wuhan. Could you comment on both of those? Thank you.
Before that, thank you, Jamie. Before that, I will just repeat the question for journalists online because we don't have a mic here. So the first question was about the measures introduced by some countries and advice given by the UK government to the nationals to leave the country, to leave China, sorry. And the second question was about the comments that have been made by one of the members of the EC committee regarding China response. So I will see who would like to take this question.
I can have a stab at the first question. Yes, certainly, as the DG has said, at this moment in time, we need to have calm, well thought out public health measures that protect individuals' health. And I think each country is making assessments based on their own individual risk assessments to their citizens around this event. However, certainly a situation where many individuals are potentially leaving the country, we don't believe those individuals are necessarily at the highest risk. But it's certainly an unplanned measure like that needs to be accompanied with the necessary screening and the necessary public health measures to ensure that. So the issue here is the balance between the measure to protect citizens and the balance of the public health risk protection to protect other citizens, and each country has to make that balance themselves. But we will we are monitoring all public health measures, and we've been doing a systematic review over the last 48 hours of all measures taken by all member states, and we will be sharing our assessment of those measures with member states and sharing with other member states exactly what everybody else has been doing, and try and bring some cohesion and order to that process in the coming days.
Yeah, thank you. And to that, I would also add that, considering China as if the problem is the same in all provinces could be wrong, and it's wrong. For instance, 80%, I have said it from here, cases in China are from Hubei province. So that blanket, approach may not help. And that's why Mike is saying, let's make it evidence-based. And we encourage all countries to make their decisions based on evidence, not just a blanket coverage. Because even in China, there are provinces with very few cases, like other countries in the neighborhood or beyond. So I think that is very important to consider. On the second one, first of all, John is not a member of WHO. He's not a staff of WHO. I think there could be a problem in the newspaper. It says a member of WHO. It's not. So I think it's good if they correct the facts. And the second comment I have is, I cannot say they hide or they didn't. But if you see some of the information we have, the number of cases outside China are very small. When we declare fake, they were even smaller. How many? 98 cases. And when we were discussing about calling the emergency committee, there were 68 cases. If something was hidden, then you would expect more cases to be actually exported from China to the rest of the world, if it was hidden. Because China is the most connected. I know one airline has like 17 or 18 flights a day. And imagine how the world is really interconnected. Even if China hides it, I don't think the cases would be prevented from crossing the borders to other countries. So it really defeats the logic. So that's why I say it's very hard to take that for me. I'm an epidemiologist, by the way, public health specialist. And if there was hiding, I would expect more cases, more than 68, especially the first deliberation of the EC itself, because many cases would have made it to the rest of the world without even us knowing. But again, I say, let's check. Maybe we will have the after-action review and to see if there was something hidden or not. Because I cannot say whether there was something hidden or not. I can only use some logic to really understand the situation, and that's what I would propose for the time being. And then one advice I have is, for something happened in the past, we will have the after-action review. And we have scientists who will really understand, investigate that, and tell us the truth. Now, as global community, please, let's focus on the actions we can take today to prevent this outbreak from spreading all over the world. We have 190 countries in 90 cases in our hands in the rest of the world. It's small, but the situation can get worse. Let's use this window of opportunity to really invest in prevention, to invest in control, and prevent this virus from spreading. It's time to act, not to speculate and spread fear, spread panic. That's not the time. It's really time to look forward and act. That's what I would advise. And on WHO side, we will do everything to address this outbreak. But I would leave to such kind of perceptions by whoever it is for the after-action review, because I don't think it helps now. Let's act, and act, and act. Thank you.
Maybe I could just add that John is an eminent scientist for whom we have great respect, but John has led a career that has been driven by evidence. And I think the issue here is evidence, not speculation. And we need, at this point, to avoid speculation that's not driven by evidence in all spheres, be it scientific, political, or otherwise.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tedros. Thank you very much, Mike. Lady here, and then John. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, I have three questions. First, after the swift construction of the two field hospitals, several public facilities in Wuhan, including a sports stadium and two convention centers, are renovated into the so-called cabin hospitals or the mobile hospitals to accommodate more patients with milder symptoms. So how do you think these actions would help reduce the mortality rate and contain the epidemics in the epicenter? And the second question is, yesterday Dr. Tedros reiterated in the technical briefing that the WTO is sending a team of international experts to China to increase understanding of the outbreak and to guide the global response. So could you elaborate more on the composition and the mission of this team, its concrete plans, and any outcome could we expect from the visit of this group in China? And the third question is, while there are mixed messages right now, all kinds of potential therapies and vaccines against the novel coronavirus, could you clarify to us, for the moment, what is known and what is unknown to the WHO on the efficacy or potential efficacy of those therapies and vaccines that are currently available? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll repeat again for the journalists online, and we apologize again for technical issues. The audio file that you will receive immediately after will be of a good quality. First question was about the hospitals that are being built in Wuhan for milder cases. What's the comment of WHO? Second question is of international mission to China that has been agreed. Do we have news on that? And third question was to clarify where we are with the treatments and vaccines being developed. Thank you.
I'll try and answer the technical aspects that the DG may wish to supplement. It's certainly impressive what's been achieved in a very short number of days in China, and represents a remarkable effort not only in public health but in logistics and in planning and architecture. And certainly the ability to bring patients, be they moderate or severe, to a site where they can be treated properly not only helps those patients but also helps remove those patients who may be infectious from the rest of the community. This is a major undertaking, and those hospitals now and the various facilities that have been set up also, remember, will be staffed by Chinese doctors, nurses and others who've come from other parts of China to help. So it's also a remarkable act of solidarity within China, between the provinces, and clearly demonstrates the determination of the Chinese health authorities at this present time. So they continue to do everything humanly possible, both to put the health of their own population above any other consideration, and in doing that offer an opportunity for the rest of us to prepare. The international team, we've been engaging very closely with Chinese authorities, and we have agreement in principle for the team. We're now working on the final composition of that team. I won't speak to the exact membership of the team as we're still making arrangements for that, but I can assure you that this is a multinational team made up of global experts from the north and south, from the east and west, who will cover areas from clinical management to virology to vaccine drug development, ecologic investigation, animal health, epidemiology, public health and risk communication. The team's objective is to learn primarily from Chinese counterparts on their experience in dealing with this event, so the world can learn from them. There is also a huge opportunity for collaboration, for sharing of ideas, in order to shape studies in China and studies abroad, so we can have a coherent and evidence-based approach. So it would be silly to suggest that a small international team by itself can in any way do more than learn from China and offer whatever brain power it can to our Chinese colleagues, who at this stage must be very tired. And I think this is an act, as the DG said before, not only as an act of science, this is an act of solidarity on behalf of the global community, to share the burden with and share ideas with our colleagues in China. The last question was on therapeutics. Yes, there are no proven effective therapeutics for novel coronavirus. But what we have seen in previous epidemics associated with coronavirus, and we see in this event, that a high standard of care in providing intensive care, especially respiratory support and support to other organs, is very important. This epidemic, and if you look at the age and sex distribution, is predominantly causing severe disease and death in older patients, many of whom have underlying conditions. So supporting a patient through the most severe portion of the infection and ensuring that they don't, and many of the patients who've died have died from multi-organ failure, where many organs fail, not necessarily directly as a result of the virus infection, but a result of the demand and the shock that the virus causes in the body in general. So many patients of the severe end will survive if given adequate supportive care. But that in some cases is very intensive and very demanding on health workers, and obviously doing that with full PPE on is a challenge, and you've seen that in many of the images. It is one thing to care for a patient in your normal gear. It's an altogether different challenge to do that when you're wearing PPE. And it is also frightening for the patient themselves, because they don't have the normal human contact that we would expect. So this is not a normal situation in that regard. There are therapeutics that have been used and are being used, like protease inhibitors, like interferons and others. And we've been carrying out a systematic review of all of the available therapeutics, and that's been part of the work of the Research and Development Blueprint here at WHO. There are Maria's here, but there are hundreds of clinicians and others in active virtual communication with almost daily teleconferences. And what's been wonderful is to see Chinese clinicians on the line with clinicians who are managing patients all over the world, and literally exchanging information of what we're doing, what we did yesterday, what we're doing today, what's working, what's not. But amongst that process, we need to bring systematic gathering of evidence, and we have created standardized reporting forms for the clinical data, so we can centralize all that information to see what is working and what is not. We have also shared clinical trial protocols with all of the countries dealing with cases, which allow them to potentially systematically test drugs. And next week in Geneva, there will be a major meeting, which will be both in Geneva and virtual, of hundreds of researchers and agencies involved in research to set the priorities for the development of therapeutics, diagnostics and drugs. So this is a global effort from the clinician in the front line today, connected to the world, and the world connected to each patient through those clinicians. And managing that process is a huge task in itself. But it is a great sign of the solidarity, and again remembering that the real heroes in this response are the frontline doctors and nurses who are going to work every day and trying to help and save patients from this virus.
Yeah, I think the general had said it all. We're working round the clock. We have an internal core group which is meeting daily basis, and also a global coordination meeting on weekly basis. So be it vaccines or support to countries which are vulnerable is checked round the clock. So we will push the same way. One more thing I would like to comment on, agreeing on what he said, is especially about the expert team. As you may remember, on January 22 and 23, we had a meeting of the emergency committee. This was to decide whether the situation is fake or not. And as you may remember also, January 23, the emergency committee was divided, so the recommendation to me was, let's meet in 10 days. So I accepted that recommendation and immediately flew to China to discuss, to use that window until the next meeting of the emergency committee. And our discussion was very frank and very candid, and there were 3 outcomes. One, on the strategy, meaning alignment on the strategy. And we have agreed with the Chinese government to focus on the epicenter, to really take serious measures at the source, protecting the Chinese people and protecting the rest of the world. That is the most important part of the travel, which is aligning on the strategy and full commitment from China. The second was sending experts. And the third thing we agreed was on sharing data and sharing information, because that's the beginning of solidarity. And all that is taken care of. And the team of experts, we believe, will be leaving very, very soon. But one thing I would like to underline here is the constant engagement of countries is very important. And now we are talking to ministers, and I have spoken to most of them who have reported cases. And the reason being to align on strategies, to align on sharing of information, and to align on other issues like using joint experts to understand the situation. So we will move that way, and the use of experts is not just specific to China, and this is part of the global coordination that each and every country, whether they have reported cases or not, should be applied for. And we're increasing the speed, we're increasing the scale, and we're trying to use the window of opportunity we have to the maximum. And that's what we're asking the international community also, to use the window of opportunity we have now. And many countries have already triggered their operation centers, and we will support them in any way possible.
Thank you very much. We will take one question that's from John Zagacostas here, and then we will go online to some journalists. John, please wait for the mic so I don't have to repeat the question.
Yes. Good afternoon. John Zagacostas for France 24 and The Lancet. Dr. Tedros, you just mentioned that one of the agreements in Beijing was the sharing of the data. Can you shed some light how much of the confirmed Chinese cases you've received the data in Geneva and in regional offices? Yesterday you read the Riot Act that many developed countries, less than 40%, had provided the data. What is the situation with the Chinese data? What percentage has been received? The reason I'm saying that, there was a classified briefing yesterday in Washington, and the most senior senator in the US Senate basically raised concerns about the reliability of the Chinese data. So if you could put that to rest. Thank you.
Thanks, John. You are correct in terms of the number of countries currently of the 24 who we've received comprehensive data from is improving, but it's certainly not complete. And the Director General spoke with the Ministers of Health of all of those countries, and actually sent a circular to every Minister of Health in the world, specifically reminding them of the responsibilities to share this data on a regular, if not daily, basis. We also, the DG also asked not only for the sharing of the surveillance data, cases, confirmed cases, but for the results of the community studies and other transmission studies that were being carried out, so we can collate all of those together. And we've been looking at a lot of that data that's been received so far. The Chinese authorities continue to share with us daily numbers. They also continue to share with us, as they did at the EC, detailed epidemiologic descriptions and clinical descriptions of the cases, including epidemic curves. The issues they face in the last week with the growing number of cases is sharing detailed and translated individual case forms. You can imagine the challenge for country X that has 12 cases are very different to a country that has reported 4,000 cases yesterday. So I think we need to leave a little bit of leeway and room here. This is a challenge, and we're very careful that we don't want to overtax the system, but at the same time get the information we need. We're certainly pleased with the clinical information. We're getting very detailed information on the clinical experience. We're getting very detailed information on the work being done in the lab. As you've seen, they've shared the country continues to share sequences on open platforms. So overall, we're pleased. We would, though, obviously like to have as up-to-date information as possible, but we say that to all member states. We say that now to every member state that has cases, including China, that we would like daily disaggregated data from them. And this is not so WHO has data. That is not the point. The point is that the world has the evidence it needs to make good decisions in the coming days and weeks. And within the strategic response plan, there is an element of that's around that global coordination function, and you'll see how that's costed out. But you'll also see in the strategic response plan that the vast majority of that investment is actually targeted at countries so they can build their capacity to detect, assess, contain, treat cases and report those cases at the global level. So if you point yourselves to that plan, the core of that plan is about improving our collective capacity to detect, prepare and respond to this event.
Thank you very much. The answers were quite long, which is good, but we will have to leave soon, so we have time for 2 more questions, and I think it's fair that we give one question from Hello. Can we hear Nurit from NPR? If not, we can try with her to be the last question. And now I'll give a floor to our friend Chu. Just a second, please.
Thank you. Thank you. I have 2 questions. I'm Liu from China's Xinhua News Agency. First one is specific for Dr. Michael Ryan. There are reports about U.S. drug companies. They're sending their anti-HIV drugs to China. Actually, the drugs have already arrived in China yesterday. 2 companies. One is Johnson & Johnson. The other one is AbbVie. The question is, how come these 2 anti-HIV drugs has anything to do with this coronavirus from the technical point of view? And the second question is, also there are reports that because of the shortage of not only the PPE, as you call it, but also the diagnostic testing equipment at the epicenter in Hubei, actually in Wuhan city, there are death cases. People are dying even before they are diagnosed as confirmed cases. They're not even suspects, and because of the limitation of the hospitals and the medical resources, they are not admitted to those hospitals. And the question is, how does the WHO have to say with that?
First of all, on the anti-HIV drugs, as I said previously, there are no current therapeutics that are thought to be highly effective in the treatment of coronaviruses in general. In many cases, when we have a new disease, researchers will look to see what the activity of existing drugs is against a new infectious disease. In certain circumstances where there is reasonable empirical evidence, countries may use those drugs on a compassionate use basis or an off-label. This is a licensed product which is licensed for use in a certain disease, but because the drug is considered to be safe and effective in another disease, in a controlled environment, those drugs can be tested against something like coronavirus. But it's extremely important when that is done that clinical data is collected on the experience of the patient, so that can be used to build the case for or against the use of those drugs. And we've seen in cases too many outbreaks in the past the use of different types of interventions, and at the end of the outbreak we know less than we knew at the beginning. So it's really important that if such drugs are used, they're used under the authority of the national authorities. They're part of either compassionate trials or they're used as part of clinical trials, and they're overseen by the highest regulatory and ethical standards. And I believe that will be the case in the use of any drugs. I'm looking at Sylvie in case she has any supplementary comment to make on that.
No, I think Mike is fully right, and I think the drugs have been part of other protocols that have been used for MERS virus, which is also a coronavirus, and this is why you have heard about those drugs, but currently none of those have been approved, and it's still we are still at the research phase. So, and this is something we will discuss next week at this research meeting to see how we can have standardized protocol and how those different antivirals can be used for this particular virus.
Regarding the issue of diagnostics in China, our understanding is that China, and particularly in Hubei and Wuhan, there are adequate reagents and adequate materials for carrying out the test, but there clearly is a backlog in testing, and very often that is the availability of enough laboratory technicians. You can only imagine the workload there is on the laboratories at the moment with the number of cases. And remember, when you see 4,000 confirmed cases or 3,000, that can mean thousands of negative cases as well. And getting a negative result is just as much hard work as getting a positive result. So the strain, and there might be only a small percentage of people who turn out positive. So the workload on those labs and those lab technicians is extreme. So one can expect, and in situations like this, one always sees a backlog. What we're working with the Chinese authorities on is prioritizing that process so that the most important patients get their diagnosis early. I'm not aware of any particular individual cases where people have died before diagnosis. I'll be happy to speak with you afterwards, but that certainly isn't the aim. The other thing that sometimes happens, not in this case, is sometimes people come to healthcare very late, and we've seen certain instances of that, and they may be very sick when they arrive. So it's not unusual, it's not ideal, but it's certainly not unusual to see people diagnosed close to death, especially if they've come late for care. But clearly, there is no question that the system is under some strain, and the system is having to react and scale up the response. But again, we must pay respect to the scale up in the lab service that has occurred, particularly in Wuhan and Hubei, over the last 3 to 4 weeks.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we will have to conclude this press conference as Director General has an important meeting to go to. We apologize to all journalists online for technical issues we had and that we haven't been able to take their questions. But as Director General said, we will try to have daily briefings of this sort. So please stay with us in coming days. The audio file will follow shortly, as well as transcript. Thank you very much for your attention.
So see you tomorrow. Thank you.
We're going to do daily briefings, but I've got to get the DG out of here because he's got a meeting upstairs.
Keep him here. He's our friend.
Why not you stay and then continue?
What I will do is, I will leave my two colleagues, the general and the...
We'll bring Maria in.
And Maria come.
And Scott.
And Scott.
In 6 minutes.
So you will excuse me, but I will keep my colleagues behind. The board meeting, as you know, is ongoing. So I have to go and answer there also, okay? I think this is a good deal. Bargain.
See you tomorrow.
Bargain. See you tomorrow. Come here,
so,
please.
Scott.
So look, if we can then, we take this proposal from DG and we continue for another 10 minutes with our guests. So Gabriela and Catherine.
Okay.
And then Buddy, and then probably that will be it for today. So Catherine, please go ahead. Let me just put those nameplates.
This is.
Here we have a new round of guests.
This is just the team for the second half, is it?
Team B.
Okay, Gabriela, please go ahead.
Microphone, hang on.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Catherine,
yeah, because
hang on.
she-
The two of you, whatever.
Hi. Hello. Catherine Fiancon-Bokonga for France 24. Two questions. The first one is regarding next week meeting of researchers and agencies. If you could elaborate a little bit on that. When is it going to take place? Who is invited? Who is going to meet? What is on the agenda? And also, if you could also say a bit more about how you plan or you are helping developing countries. Yesterday, I listened to the technical meeting, and different countries asked questions, among them Sudan. And I would like to know, they're quite prepared, but they say that they had a small gap of 2 million. So how can you help the countries like Sudan or other countries that don't have a weak health system? Thank you.
and 12th of February here in Geneva, here at WHO. And it's a global research meeting for 2019 novel coronavirus. It will not only focus on R&D for diagnostics, therapeutics, and vaccines. It will also cover research in the areas of the animal source, at the animal-human interface, early epidemiologic and clinical investigations, research around IPC and healthcare workers, in addition to advancing the development of rapid diagnostics, serologic assays, therapeutics for patients, and vaccines.
And social science.
And social sciences, thank you. And social sciences. So it will be everything. So we want this, thank you. It's social sciences is not an afterthought. It is something that is prominent in all of our responses and in research. We have invited global researchers, public health professionals, academics, frontline people who are directly dealing with patients to come to this. It's been put together quickly. So we've done our best to ensure that we have the right people at the table. We will try to bring in people virtually as well, because it is difficult at the last minute. And, you know, frankly, many of these individuals are on the front line working and dealing with this. But we want to bring the best minds together, the people who have experience in this, so that we can come away with a comprehensive research agenda around the novel coronavirus.
So in terms of providing support to weaker health systems, we released yesterday the Strategic Response Plan, which is the international community's support to all countries to prepare for and respond to the coronavirus. In that plan, we outlined very clearly the different actions that have to happen at country level in terms of preparedness, being able to detect, being able to diagnose, being able to treat people affected by the virus to prevent the onward transmission. Within this, there's a budget of $675 million. The vast majority of that money is for national governments of weaker health systems to scale up their preparedness and response. We're working with a lot of international donors and the multilateral development banks to make sure that emergency financing can be provided to countries such as South Sudan and Sudan, as mentioned yesterday. As to all countries, we're providing clear guidance and technical expertise of what needs to be done, and we're engaging with the broader set of technical and operational partners at country level, such as through the UN country teams, to identify those partners that are in a very good position to rapidly support national governments to scale up these preparedness and response activities. Within this, we've also got a measurement framework of being able to measure the progress towards preparedness and response, and we'll be doing that on a regular basis.
And just to maybe add and give you a practical example, as of the 3rd of February, which I think was the day before yesterday, only 2 countries in Africa had the capacity to diagnose nCoV. As of the 7th of February, almost all countries in Africa will have that capacity. WHO has dispatched 250,000 properly standardized test kits to 70 countries all over the world. This was dispatched from Germany yesterday. And when you think this virus was only identified, isolated, characterized, sequenced, and that sequence shared sometime in the 2nd week of January, to not be in the second week of February, and we already have standardized diagnostics going. In addition to that, 24 countries yesterday came to Addis Ababa, or to Senegal, I think. Senegal, to the Institut Pasteur, and NICD South Africa and Institut Pasteur trained those technicians. We did this in collaboration with the Africa CDC. So those reagents will meet with trained technicians, and we hope that every country in Africa will get that, will have that capacity. Also, that expense has been borne by WHO, but through this process we've been able to negotiate a price for those diagnostics that's between 1/10 and 1/100 of what they would cost on the open market. So we've tried to create a good value solution with a high quality standardized diagnostic network. Again, we're basing this on our existing global influenza surveillance network, and the expansion of national influenza centres in Africa over the last number of years has created a much bigger infrastructure. So we're seeing the progressive use of preparedness that's been in place before, been used as a platform for expanding readiness. And we see good things can come of this. So that's just one example. And we need to do that for clinical management. We need to do that for social science. We need to do that for other things. But we're not just talking about preparedness. We're actively doing it. And when you look at the strategic response plan, the vast majority of that, over $600 million, is aimed directly at building the capacity of those countries. And when you look at those countries, we have, I think at the moment, we have something like 27 countries that are at high risk of importing the virus or already have imported it that need direct assistance very quickly. And then we have a group of countries who have some capacities but will require some technical assistance, and that's 34. So we have over 50 countries that already either have a high risk of importation or have a need for either direct operational assistance or technical assistance from us. That's a big challenge, and we very much rely on our regional office platforms. And again, we'd like to thank our colleagues in our 6 regional offices around the world who operate as the main platform for us to deliver that. So while we focus here on global support, global issues, our regional offices are able to focus their effort on delivering the technical and operational assistance to the countries that need it.
Just what is the price of one test, please, Mike?
Oh, we'll have to get back to you.
We'll have to go.
Yeah,
we'll get back to you on the actual price.
So what is the normal price of a test?
We're benchmarking that against other tests that are available in kits. We'll come back to you with the exact price. I don't have it here with me.
Okay, and how many countries in Africa?
24 will be delivered.
That can help?
Oh.
Well, it depends whether you're saying in our African region or on the African continent, but...
Africa region?
20 countries.
20.
Yeah. 20. Yeah, 20. I would say, in terms of targeting countries, as Mike said, there's probably about 60 countries globally which we think are of weaker health system that really are at high risk of imported cases. And this, when the DG says the times to act now and the window of opportunities now, this is really getting this basic support package to these countries now. Within Africa, that's probably around about 25 countries.
Okay, so we'll take one more question, Buddy, please. And Gabriela, I thought you did. You want? Okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah. The same question was for Latin America. You can talk about Latin America. Yes, thank you so much, Gabriela Sotomayor, Mexico, Proceso. If you can talk about preparation and everything. Same question as Africa, but from Latin America. Thank you.
We'll come back to that tomorrow with the breakdown by different regions. We've broken them down by fragility and by needs. Tomorrow we'll come back with some maps showing you that. But in general, as a general statement, South America and Central America have very strong laboratory networks in general. Because of polio, because of measles, because of other things, they generally have strong public health systems in that sense. So we have more confidence and have less countries that directly need operational assistance. But we will come back. I mean, there are countries that have suffered recent shocks and who may need more assistance. So let us come back to you tomorrow with a more precise.
Yeah, for example, Venezuela, for example.
Exactly. So let us come back to you tomorrow with some more precision on that, rather than speculating ourselves. We're an evidence-based organisation, as we like to be. So we clearly.
Dr. Rand has to leave as well, so I really suggest that if other guests can stop the press conference here, and if our guests, other guests can stay for a little bit longer to answer one-on-one questions. Thank you very much for everyone, and thank you for being with us. We will be again here tomorrow. Thank you.
No, that's the reason why we don't get the floor.
This is the primary audio circuit for the Reuters Live service. This is the